Welcome to TonightTales Audio, where quiet moments become unforgettable stories. Sit back, relax, and let tonight's tale begin. The Static. Every Thursday, Erik visits the old lighthouse on West Coast. He parked his aging bicycle beside the gravel path leading to the lighthouse and walked the final few hundred meters alone. Even on calm days, the waves whispered against the rocks below, and the wind carried the distant cries of gulls across the harbor. The inspections are simple. Check the light, check the backup power, fill out the report. He unlocked the heavy door and stepped inside. The familiar scent greeted him immediately. Salt, old wood, dust, sand. The lighthouse had long since become automated. Modern ships relied on GPS, radar, and satellite navigation. The light itself remained important, but the need for a keeper had slowly faded away. Drink a cup of coffee while looking out over the sea. Then, one evening, a burst of static crackles from an old marine radio that hasn't been used in years. Erik freezes. A voice emerges from the noise. "Lighthouse keeper, do you copy?" Curious, Erik answers. The man on the other end introduces himself as Thomas. He says he is the lighthouse keeper. At first, both men assume it's some kind of joke, but the details don't add up. Thomas talks about fishing boats Erik has only seen in old photographs. He mentions people who died decades ago. When Erik talks about smartphones and satellite navigation, Thomas laughs. "You're making that up." Slowly, an impossible truth begins to take shape. They are speaking from the same lighthouse, just not the same year. The following Thursday, Erik returned earlier than usual. He told himself it was curiosity. Nothing more. The radio sat exactly where he had left it, silent, motionless, just an old piece of equipment gathering dust. For nearly an hour, nothing happened. He completed his inspection, checked the batteries, reviewed the weather data, finished his coffee. Then, as the sun began to sink toward the horizon, the radio crackled. Static filled the room, and the voice returned. "Lighthouse keeper, do you copy?" This time, Erik was ready. He picked up the microphone. "I copy." Several seconds passed, then the man laughed softly. "Well, that's a relief." Over the following weeks, the conversations became longer. Thomas spoke about the sea as if it were an old friend. He knew every reef, every current, every hidden danger along the coast. Sometimes they talked about storms, sometimes about ships, sometimes about absolutely nothing at all. One evening, Thomas asked, "So what kind of navigation equipment are the boats using these days?" Erik smiled. "Mostly GPS." Silence followed. "What's GPS?" Erik laughed. "That's a difficult question." "Try me." For nearly 20 minutes, Erik attempted to explain satellites. Thomas remained deeply suspicious of the entire concept. "You're telling me there are machines floating in space helping fishermen find their way home?" "Pretty much." "That sounds ridiculous." "It works." "Still ridiculous." They both laughed. And for a moment, the impossible nature of their friendship disappeared. They were simply two men sharing stories, separated by decades, united by the same lighthouse. As autumn deepened, Erik found himself looking forward to Thursdays. The conversations became the highlight of his week, and although neither of them said it aloud, both knew the same thing. The lighthouse was no longer the reason they kept coming back. It was the voice waiting on the other side of the static. One rainy afternoon, Erik visited the local library. While searching local archives, Erik discovers something unsettling. A newspaper article, a faded photograph, a familiar name. Thomas? According to the records, Thomas disappeared during a violent storm many years ago. The date of the storm is approaching. For Thomas. For the first time, Erik realizes that their conversations may be running out of time. The following Thursday, Erik brought the newspaper clipping with him. For most of the evening, he kept it folded beside the radio. Eventually, he found the courage to speak. "Thomas?" "Yeah?" "I found an old newspaper article." The signal crackled softly. It mentioned the lighthouse. A pause. "And?" Erik looked at the faded photograph. "It mentioned you." Silence followed. "What did it say?" Erik swallowed. "It said you disappeared during a storm." The radio remained quiet for several seconds. Then Thomas finally spoke. "Well?" "I've had a long life." Erik looked out at the darkening sea. You don't seem surprised? Working out here long enough teaches you something. What's that? Thomas smiled. Nothing lasts forever. The radio crackled softly. For a while, neither man spoke. The storm filled the silence between them. Finally, Thomas laughed quietly. You know, when this all started, I thought someone was playing a joke on me. Erik smiled. So did I. Now it feels strange not knowing if I'll hear your voice next Thursday. The words hit harder than Erik expected. He stared at the rain racing down the lighthouse window. Yeah? Another burst of static. Then Thomas spoke again. I'm glad I answered the radio. Erik closed his eyes. So am I. Erik looks out toward the dark sea. The lighthouse beam sweeps across the waves. Steady, unbroken, still doing its job after all these years. He smiles. Yes. The lighthouse is still here, and so are you. The radio falls silent. The static fades. And for the first time in months, there is nothing on the other side. When Erik leaves the lighthouse that night, he turns back one last time. The light continues to shine across the water, and somehow, the place no longer feels empty. Thank you for spending your time with TonightTales audio. If this story made you smile, think, dream, or simply helped you relax, let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you'd like more stories like this. Every comment, every like, and every listener means more than you know. Until our paths cross again in another story, thank you for listening.